Hello, this is Christina Simmons with the Say Yes to Holiness podcast. I'm so excited that you have joined me today, and especially because of our guest, who we're going to have some fun, a little bit, but also we're going to be talking about some things that are very important for all of us, which is all related to pro-life and abortion and euthanasia and all of those different life issues, which sometimes can be difficult to talk about. But I'm so excited. Camille Pauley, thank you, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. So you are a part of Healing the Culture, and that's an organization that many people might not be familiar with, but they might be familiar with the person that you collaborate with. Mm-hmm. So could you share a little bit about what Healing the Culture does?
Sure. So Healing the Culture is the pro-life organization of Fr Robert Spitzer, who many of your listeners and viewers may be familiar with from EWTN and Gonzaga University and a number of other venues. We founded the organization together in 2003, and our purpose is very different from most of the rest of the pro-life movement. We kind of do what nobody else is doing. We fill in the philosophical gap in people's minds and hearts about why they need to be pro-life. And so we open the door to a whole dialogue about what happiness is, all these terms that people kind of revolve around when they're trying to figure out the abortion question. What is happiness? What's going to make me happy? What is success? What is quality of life and freedom and love? And, what about suffering? And what's a human person and human rights? So we define all those terms in the rich way that our Catholic faith has given us. And then we show people how abortion forces you to live for lower, much less dignified views of those words. And then we show how, if you choose to live for the higher meaning of those words, it opens the door to a whole bunch of principles that abortion and euthanasia violate, like principles of truth, non-contradiction. It can't be a baby and not a baby at the same time. Or principles of ethics, non-maleficence, do no harm. Or principles of justice. Life is necessary for the very possibility of liberty, where liberty doesn't exist. And so we teach this whole curriculum, and we provide resources for schools and parishes and families and homeschools so that you can teach the people that you have influence over using our resources and our support.
That is such, you are so absolutely right about the fact that there is such a gap, in our world, but even in our church, that are not speaking to these challenges that we have. And it was so beautiful to hear you expressing so clearly, concisely, and directly the challenges, those tensions that we're all running into in our daily life. But, someone will run into us and they'll say, something to the effect about, the positives of pro-choice, quote unquote, and it'll be like, oh my gosh, how do I respond to that? Or, my daughter or son comes home from school and they're speaking to me about the fact of, well, it's a woman's right, to do what she wants with her body. And how do I respond to that?
Yes.
And so just in that instance alone, how might that curriculum be able to help parents in particular be able to, handle those situations?
Well, it changes the way you think about why you are pro-life. It's very tempting to fall into the statistics or the slippery slope arguments or the legal arguments. But really, abortion is not legal and prevalent in our culture today because people haven't seen the statistics or because they don't know what an unborn baby looks like. They're really pro-choice or pro-abortion because they're living for the wrong things. And so if somebody says to you, well, I think it's a woman's choice, I think it should be legal, it shouldn't be up to us or whatever, it opens the door for you to say, well, you think this should be another person's choice, but I know you wouldn't say that about murder, about rape, or about racism. So what is it about abortion that makes you think it should be a person's choice? So now you've asked them to open up the door. I'm not just going to talk to you on the surface level. I want to get underneath, find out what's motivating it, right? Well, I think people should be free. Oh, good. What do you think freedom is? Well, I think freedom is being able to have choices. All choices? Obviously not, because you just agreed abortion, murder and rape shouldn't be legal. So what do you mean by that when you say choices? Well, limited choices. Well, what limits the choices? And now you can get into a dialogue about love, what human beings are made for, our responsibility towards the other, our desires for generosity and compassion and care, and how these are the things that make life worth living. And these are the things that drive our definitions of things like freedom and
Mhm.
choices. So it really gets people to talk much more deeply. So our resources help you to sort of change the way you're thinking about the dialogue with somebody, and triggers you into moving much more deeply instead of the arguments that really don't have an impact on people. They've made up their mind on how they're going to live. And so often pro-lifers say, people have already made up their mind. There's nothing I can say that's going to change them. It's true if you're bringing up statistics and legal facts and practical arguments and things like slippery slopes. But it isn't true if you're willing to go deep with them. Why do you think that happiness means material pleasure and ego gratification? Why do you
Mhm.
think that? Do you not think there's a deeper level of happiness that comes from self-sacrifice, serving the poor and the vulnerable and the little weak ones, like an unborn child? Wow. When you say that, they're like, well, nobody's ever talked about abortion like that before. And that's
Right.
exactly where the dialogue needs to be.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think it's absolutely spot on that you spoke about going deeper. Our
Mhm.
society, I've seen lives at such a superficial level, and it's just like we're
Yes.
going from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. There's little reflection that's going on. And in fact, that's one of the things I speak always with people about within the Say Yes community, is the fact that, it's about prioritizing what is it that we have been created for. And
Right.
of course, it's that three layers of our vocation, that call to holiness, to the call, of course, to become the saints that God created us to be. But then also it's within that particular state of life, but then it's that personal mission, that only you can do. And, how do we discern that? Well, the only way we can do that is that if we're living properly ordered and
Mhm.
according to how God has created us to be.
That's right, Christina. That's exactly what Mother Teresa meant when she said it's a poverty that a child must die so that you can live as you wish.
Mhm.
It's how are you prioritizing your life, and what are you living for that you would kill somebody in order to get that? And
Mhm.
so what we want to do is really help people look at those priorities, figure out where they've misprioritized and how they're called to something much deeper than that. So the kind of work we do, we call it kind of the pre-evangelizing
Mhm.
arm of the pro-life movement, where we're getting in to have people really take a look at the way that they're viewing their own meaning and their own purpose in life, and helping
Mm.
them to transform that. And we've got a lot of tools for your audiences to use to do that. So we've made it
Well,
very easy.
you had spoke about one of them before we got on, and
Mhm.
that was about a particular curriculum, for families. And I'm
Mhm.
not going to steal your thunder, but go ahead and share about what
Well,
that is.
well, sure. Anybody who knows Father Spitzer knows that he's like, kind of like drinking water through a fire hydrant when he speaks. He's got so much content, and it's so amazing, and you're blown away. And so when we developed Healing the Culture, we first developed curricula for college, because that was kind of
Mhm.
where his program lends itself towards the most, and then adult materials and resources. And then we went down to high school and we developed a high school curriculum. And now we're working on K-8, and we have launched our very first program. A lot of your listeners and viewers are going to love this. It is called Philo and Sophie, Philosophy for Children, and it's a pro-life curriculum at the age level of kindergarten, first and second.
Mhm.
And people can access that at philoandsophie.org. It's spelled
Okay.
Philo, and Sophie is Sophie, philoandsophie.org. And what it does is it's kind of like Sesame Street style, little vignettes. There's like 12-minute videos that you watch where there's puppets and animation and actors, and it's very high quality. And then there are parent pieces to go with it for activities afterwards. And it teaches all these concepts of what is real happiness and what is quality of life. What does it mean to be successful? And what does it mean to be important and valuable? And we even teach this principle of non-contradiction to second graders. Something can't be and not be at the same time, at the same place. And these little kids get it. We even beta
Mhm.
tested this on kindergartners, the non-contradiction curriculum.
Mhm.
And these little kids get it. And then at the end, we apply it to a pro-life issue without talking about abortion at all. It
Mhm.
cannot be a baby and not a baby at the same time in the mom's belly. And these kids love it. The teachers love it. The teachers tell us they've learned things they've never heard before. So I really encourage your listeners to go to philoandsophie.org. Or if that's hard to remember, they can go to our website, healingtheculture.com. And
Mhm.
then all of our resources are on that website, including the Philo and Sophie link.
I'll make sure to put the links in our show notes.
Oh,
That way
great.
people are able to find it and go to it. And, definitely it's something that for any family who especially are feeling those tensions of, if for whatever reason, kids are in public school, or because you're not homeschooling, or if, even within some Catholic schools, unfortunately, the curriculum is not as strong as we would hope it would be,
Mhm.
especially for teaching, pro-life, issues issues and addressing these things. And so it's something of where this is a way that we can have those conversations and be able to do it in which it's talking about the humanness of our journey, rather than this is a conservative issue, or it's a, or it's a Catholic issue, or, this is a human issue. And I think so often, when people are starting to address these kind of things, especially as adults, it starts to become highly politicized very quickly.
Yes.
And so I kind of want to turn a little bit to the fact of how is it that, our politics and culture have been impacted by these issues, particularly the mindset, and what it is that we've been speaking about. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, some people like to say that politics is downstream of culture, and other people say culture is downstream of politics. And I really think it goes both ways. When you have a culture where your media, your entertainment industry, your advertising industries, your educational institutions, and even your political institutions and business organizations are all orienting itself towards pushing this notion of the self as preeminent. You can do it. You are the best. Be what you want to be. Have what you want to have. You can have everything. It's all about you. It's going to bleed into your politics, and it's going to bleed into your law. And the same thing is the other way around. If you have laws that legalize things that are completely beneath us, that are immoral, and that ravage our higher notions of happiness and purpose, it's going to change the culture. And you can see that happening with Roe versus Wade. Legalization of abortion comes along, and now people begin to rely on abortion as contraception. And then suddenly relationships begin to break down. And every single thing that abortion was supposed to cure has actually gotten exponentially worse since abortion was legalized in 1973 nationwide. So it's really runs both ways. And you need the law to control the heartless and to set the standard for what a culture should be like. But you need the culture to rise up with education and evangelization so that you can change the law when things go awry.
It's so very true. And there's a particular case that is before the Supreme Court right now, the Dobbs case, and a lot of people might have heard about it indirectly, but could you speak to it in the sense of why it is important, what's going on, and then also what, why should the U.S. Supreme Court potentially overturn Roe v. Wade with this case?
Yes, and especially relevant now is the Texas case as well, which the Supreme Court has now just determined that has decided that the Texas case or law could stand while their case is being heard in front of the Supreme Court. The Dobbs case is actually known as Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Center. It came out of Mississippi, and they passed a law in Mississippi that makes abortion illegal after 15 weeks. Which really challenges the standard viability set up by Roe versus Wade and its corollary case. And so what this law says is at 15 weeks and older, you cannot kill the child. It's a human being. It must be protected. So the Supreme Court has heard the case. I listened to the 2 hours of testimony in the hearing. They've made their decision most likely by now, but they won't release their decision until June. This is critical for two reasons. Number one, the challenge of the viability standard is key. There's nothing different in the unborn child between pre-viable and post-viable, and that standard is completely arbitrary and it changes all the time. Viability simply means when is the baby able to live outside the womb on its own? And of course, no baby is able to live on its own outside the womb. It's just not possible. So what does viability even mean? My 2-year-old can't live on her own outside the womb. My 8-year-old can't live outside the womb on her own. I can't live outside the womb on my own, right? I rely on farmers and doctors and other people to care for me. So this whole standard of viability being connected to your personhood is really intellectually dishonest and unjust. But the second thing that makes this significant is that this case has the potential to overturn Roe versus Wade entirely. It may damage Roe versus Wade by just challenging that viability standard, or it may overturn Roe versus Wade. I don't know which way it's going to go. I tend to think that Roe is going to go, but who knows what the Supreme Court's going to do. Either way, I think it's going to be severely damaged, in which case, if it is overturned, abortion law goes back to the hands of all the states, and the states will battle this out one at a time, one by one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So even more important the preeminence of the work that you are doing, so that those who are in each and every city and state are able to influence their lawmakers, properly as to how it is that we should be encountering and receiving life in our
Right.
communities. So it's a absolutely beautiful work that you guys are doing, and I'm so very excited for the possibilities. Where do you see, you've just, you're rolling out this curriculum, so now kind of where it is that you guys are looking to move, from here. So you kind of have the curriculum from K through, college and adult. So what do you think is next for Healing the Culture?
Well, we've completed college and high school and K through 2, and now we're working on 3rd through 8th grades. And
Okay.
yeah, and that's a really exciting age group for me, because that's where my children are. So I get to test stuff out on my kids and see how it works and all that. But I think that's a critical age as well, because now is when the student is able to start reasoning through logic, right? Not just rote memory, but logically reason their way through an argument. And so you can introduce deeper concepts to them. What is a human person, and how do we know, and how can you prove it? And is it just a biological being, or is there something more philosophically deep about who we are, that there's something transcendent to the nature of a human person, right? We're not just a biological conglomeration of cells, bumping into each other. But we actually have this spiritual dimension, a capacity to seek transcendent truth and love and justice and beauty and a sense of home or belonging. And that's a part of the human experience. And it's very real, but it's not tangible, right? And so these kids at that age can really begin to grasp and start to understand some of these concepts. And that opens the door to a whole bigger definition of the human person than we can give to a kindergartner or second grader. So I'm really excited about developing that. That'll, your audience should look over the next couple of years for that to be developed. So that, that's the next step for us. But I think another big step for us is, no matter what happens with the Dobbs case, education is going to be key. If we win everything we want, we cannot rest on our laurels, because abortion will still happen. You will still have brokenness. You will still have post-abortive women. You will still have broken families. And you will still have, even if Roe is overturned, you're going to have about 17 states that have some form of post-Roe trigger law, where pro-life protections will instantly go into effect. Some of the states, abortion will be completely outlawed. I live in South Dakota, where we have one of the most pro-life states in the country. But you've got about 14 other states around the country which have codified abortion into their state law. And those, we need a lot of work in those states. But the rest of those, about 30, about 20 other states are completely up for grabs. And it's going to be a battle, for blood in those, literally in those states. So our work our work at Healing the Culture to educate is going to have to be ramped up, even more than before, because there's going to be a lot of confusion. Where's my state? What do I do? What does abortion mean for me now? Everything seemed so easy before, and now everything's confusing. So our educational work will be ramped up. And I think people in the political and legal battles are really going to have a tough claw. They've worked hard to get to this point with Roe versus Wade, and now it's going to be state by state.
It's something where it can seem very overwhelming, to people. You're on the front lines, you're there, you're immersed, you're engaged, with it every day. The work that you're doing is to help others. What are some practical things that we can be doing?
Good question. If you are overwhelmed about what's going on and it seems like too much, and there's, it's a burden to have, a sense of being overwhelmed and not know what to do. The number one thing you should do is pray for people who are on the front lines. They need your prayers and your grace. They need God's protection. They need his wisdom, and they need successes. And so pray for them. Pray for people who are in the legal battles and the political battles right now, because that's where this battle is at this moment. But don't forget to pray for those of us who are in the education battles too, because we're like the energy that's lifting all that up so that we can have political and legal wins in the future. So that's number one, is to pray. Number two, work with the people in your purview. You don't have to go out and be a Mother Teresa. You don't have to go out, and be a John the Evangelist. You can work right in your own core group. If your family is strong, if the people in your purview are strong, if they're educated, that's huge. Teach your grandkids. Sit down with them, with Philo and Sophie, and show them these videos. Teach your high school age kids. Get our curriculum principles and choices, which you can get at Healing the Culture, and go through that with them. Teach your college kids. We have a resource called respectlife.university with little 5-minute video clips that go through all the issues, make it real easy. What about rape and incest? What about life of the mother? What about children with disabilities? Is the unborn a human being? All these issues, little snippets like that. Our resources can help you with that. Send it to them, forward it to them, share it with them, educate them when you have time. Just in your small core, those are practical things you can do. And then, of course, I would say donate. Now is a really good time to donate to your favorite pro-life organization, because they're going to need, especially in your state, they're going to need resources to battle this state by state if Roe versus Wade is overturned, and they're going to need your help. So be prepared to do that, and be prepared to do some witnessing too. Some public witness is going to be important in these battleground states.
Wonderful, wonderful suggestions. Thank you. It's so wonderful and encouraging to be able to have conversation with someone like you, in the sense of you are out there and you're, leading the way. And so I wanted to ask, what is it that along in your own journey has convicted you and made you so passionate about the work that you're doing today?
Well, I will tell a little story that when I was about 15 or 16 years old, my dad worked in television and I wanted to be a movie star. That was my goal. I wanted to be a famous actress on TV. And here I am now on this podcast. It's so exciting, right?
Exactly.
My dad worked in TV, and he ran a whole bunch of Gregory Peck movies on his station one year. And he actually invited the famous actor Gregory Peck to the studio for some fundraising events. So I got to interact with him and do some volunteering. And I went up to him and I asked him with stars in my eyes, oh, Mr. Peck, what can I do to be a famous actor like you? And he looked at me hard and he said, "It's not what you think, kid. Do something more important with your life." And he turned away.
Wow.
My little starry-eyed balloon popped right there. And I was really discouraged by that. But it was the best thing he could have ever said to me, because it was shortly after that some friends invited me to witness in front of an abortion clinic. And I did. And I found my calling. And I realized what he meant when he said, do something more important. And I have been involved in pro-life evangelization ever since.
Wow.
So now some people will be called to be actors in Hollywood, and they can utilize that towards the pro-life good, right? And other people will be called in other methods. You don't have to do what I'm doing to be a strong pro-life witness. There are ways in your world that you can do this. But in my world, I was called directly to the heart of the movement. And I'm just really grateful for, my little angel there who told me to do something else. He wasn't afraid to say, that is not a good thing for you. Don't do it.
Well, speaking of your work, how do you think it has helped you on your own journey, in towards holiness?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's such an easy question to answer. Father Spitzer, when I met him, I was about 23, and my methodology in pro-life work was pretty radical back in those days. And when I met him, my job was to learn from him. I worked for the organization he was on the board of, and I was hired to work with him to develop this new idea he had that had never been born yet. And so I got to sit with Father Spitzer for like 6 hours one day and have him pour this entire philosophy out while I typed up notes. And I'm just crying through the whole thing. I'm like, I never heard this stuff in my life. I had no idea. I went through philosophy classes in high school and in college, and I've never heard this before. My whole notion of freedom and meaning and purpose and happiness just totally changed. And I spent the next 15 years of my life typing his books into the computer by dictation, and loved it and learned so much. And if it hadn't been for my involvement in the pro-life movement, I never would have met him. And, I could still be doing a lot of the kind of crazy radical things I did back in those days that weren't very successful. So I really owe, Father Spitzer so much of my formation and my path towards holiness. And hopefully, we get there. So.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Step by step, day by day.
Day by day.
And so it's absolutely amazing to me how our Lord brings the people and those ideas, to us that we need right at the moment that we need them.
Isn't that beautiful?
Oh, it is. It is. My own interaction with theology of the body for the first time was very similar to what it was that you were describing. And I went to Marquette University, so I had the blessing of having several Jesuits who, opened up the philosophy and what you were talking about and the theology. And it's something of where, but then when I came and first encountered theology of the body, it was just mind blowing,
Yeah.
literally.
It's
And
like the disciples on the road to Emmaus, where they're like,
yes,
weren't our hearts just burning inside of us when this guy was talking to us? And we've got that
yes.
message in the pro-life movement. And when we share it with
Mhm.
others, their hearts burn. And don't be afraid. Don't sit there and think, I can't really change people. Their minds are made up. It isn't true. Their hearts burn in them when you speak the truth. And that
Mhm.
witness is so important in our culture.
And it's so important to also remember the fact that if you are being prompted to share, the Holy Spirit is present, and the Holy Spirit's already working in the heart and mind of the person that you're with.
Yes.
And,
Yeah, that's right.
and it's something for us to always
That's right.
remember,
It's not
for
just up
us,
to
it's
you.
impossible.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm,
exactly. For us,
mhm.
it's impossible. For God, nothing is. And
Right.
so
Do your part and
absolutely
then get
wonderful.
out of the way and let the Holy Spirit in.
Oh, spot on, spot on. So, I just kind of as a little bit of fun, and considering the fact that you brought up about your earlier desire to be an actor or actress, just a couple of fun get to know you. So, what actress would you want to have play you in the movie about your life?
I would want you to play me, Christina.
Oh, I'm not an actress though.
I cannot answer that question. I don't even know where to begin. My daughter
Uh,
Juliet, maybe she's an actress. She looks like me. She'd probably do a pretty good job. So
There you go. There you go. That would be awesome for your
she's,
daughter to
but
be able to have that. Um,
yeah. So
that's super. So what is your favorite book or movie or TV series?
oh my gosh, Amazing Grace is my favorite movie.
Oh,
Yeah, about William
wow.
Wilberforce and his struggle
Yes,
to bring
yes.
down the slave trade. And you just see
Mhm.
so many mirrors in that movie between what the anti-slavery movement was fighting and how they were fighting in the pro-life movement against abortion, how we're fighting. They were kind of this jumbled group of misfits from every walk of life
Mhm.
who were stumbling and making mistakes. But they were and they were getting beaten, just
Yes.
beaten down by the establishment and by the educational institutions and the hubris of the political establishment, and they just kept at it and kept at it and kept at it, and little by little you could see this edifice just crumbling. And William Wilberforce, with all of his flaws, had this incredible faith that just he did this for God, not for himself and not for his own notoriety, but he did this for God because he believed truly that it was evil. And that is so inspiring to me, that we do this because abortion is evil and it's hurting people and it's killing people in their souls and it's leading them into hell. And we don't want them to go there. It's not just about the unborn baby. It's about our brothers and sisters already walking the earth who are walking a bad and
Mhm.
dangerous path. And so I just love the
Yeah.
inspiration of that movie, Amazing Grace. Yeah.
And it is. It's a beautiful movie. I mean, you said that. I'm like, oh yes,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
would, I was crying,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the midst of it, and so beautiful. So, kind of to wrap us all up, if you were to be able to go back in time and share one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Just only one? How do you
And it's
how do you
hard.
narrow
It's
down?
hard.
I guess I would have said, don't be afraid of yourself. Don't be afraid of your gifts. We're so afraid of what
Okay.
we can do and we hide it under a bushel basket. And
Mhm.
I did for a number of years. Don't be afraid of
Mhm.
yourself and your gifts. Get out there. Do what God is calling you to do. You will shine in your own little corner
Mhm.
if you follow his will.
Oh. Oh, such beautiful advice, not just for yourself, but for each of us. So thank you so much.
You are so
Oh,
welcome.
this is I can't believe that our time is already up.
I know, Christina, that went so
But I've
fast.
so enjoyed, yeah, our conversation has been such a joy. And so again, uh, go ahead and remind everybody of where they can get in touch with you, where they can find the information, and I'll make sure that I get it in the show notes. But go ahead and let everybody
Sure.
know how they might
Sure.
be able to reach out.
Sure. Probably the best is healingtheculture.com. So just go to our
Okay.
website, healingtheculture.com.
All right. Well, super. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. And I truly hope that our conversation has inspired you, but also has encouraged you just to do the one thing that you're able to do. As as Camille was talking about the fact of whoever's in your purview, or I speak about it in your movable square meter, wherever it is that you are, those are the people that God desires for you to be in relationship with and to accompany them. And, so go ahead and do the one thing that you know that you can do. So on that note, I say thank you again, Camille, for being with us today. And everyone
Thank
out
you,
there,
Christina.
continue to do whatever it takes so that together we can tell the master of death, not today.